Hello, welcome back to Waffle Press TV Hangouts. I'm your host, Diego Crespo, and I was going to try out a new intro, and I completely forgot about it. Damn, I had it right here. That's fine. Next week will be much better. But with me, I have...
And Maddie Sophia in the house.
All right, and we have, as usual, Hannibal and True Detective to talk. But at the very end of this episode, we're going to talk about the HBO special 7 Days in Hell with Andy Samberg and everyone's favorite Kit Harington from Game of Thrones. That's a weird movie, but follow-up, almost a perfect follow-up to our weird television shows. So let's just dive right into Hannibal.
Indeed.
This is the first episode without a food delicacy or serving of some kind for a title.
Yes, which I think is fitting. It's very fitting.
Very. Because now we're past the prequel stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We're in... Well, I mean, the first half of the season was kind of a reiteration of Hannibal, the book and movie, but really it fit in perfectly with this version of the mythology. And now we're officially in the era of the literature that the story gets its characters from. Red Dragon, and the show's title for this week is aptly named The Great Red Dragon. And that's just a cool title. It was directed by Neil Marshall, who directed 2 outstanding Game of Thrones episodes, some really cool, underappreciated horror movies, The Descent. Dog Soldiers is a little more tongue-in-cheek. It's not straight horror, it's just action thriller. It's really cool. Give it a chance, everyone. And Doomsday, which is pretty good. It's not as good as his previous 2. But, Emily, I'll let you go first. What did you think of The Great Red Dragon?
I really liked this episode. I mean, it certainly felt like a season premiere of sorts, or like a mid-season premiere. It has a totally different pace and feel from almost any of the other episodes, since we are in the aftermath of, like you said, all of the build-up and the prelude to Hannibal's incarceration. So we are in a new era of sorts, although Hannibal makes it very clear that he remains ever in control behind the glass of his memory palace, or whatever he calls it. But it was a really beautiful episode. And I mean, each and every single chapter in the show is gorgeous in its own way. But there was something about just the very deliberate pacing and kind of just the creeping, I don't know, sense of dread and knowing sort of the insanity to come from the different films that have portrayed the story. But and then, of course, with Jack going to find Will and bring him back into this world, which I think it's so much more impactful, everything that we get to see with Will Graham, than a lot of, then I guess maybe the Red Dragon movie, for example, because we have all that buildup in this crazy relationship and the way that Hannibal and Will's lives have intertwined. We see that in almost a totally different light from any other portrayal of the story so far. And so seeing Jack come back to him and be like, hey, this is what's going on. We need you. Your people are calling. It feels so much more torturous, because we see this remote and gorgeous life that he's made for himself with a little family out in the wilderness enjoying nature. And he even gets a letter from Hannibal telling him, hey, don't go through the door that Jack's opening. And he does. But I super enjoyed getting back into Will's designs. Of course, that was a missing element from the beginning of the season, but necessarily so, because it's more about the pursuit of Hannibal himself than following his crimes or the other crimes that he's been investigating in the past. And so it feels like the return to this sacred rite, this ritualistic passage back in time. It's very unsettling, especially realizing that, he is about to kill a couple of children as Francis Dollarhide, and that really freaked me out. Like in the seconds before that actually happened, they don't show it, but I was like, oh man, he has to do that in his head, which is crazy considering that he has a family now. But yeah, I really enjoyed that entire sequence with him going through the house and kind of re-entering this world, and then also getting to see too Richard Armitage as the Red Dragon himself. That was so ridiculously cool. I mean, it was a very quiet episode. There wasn't a lot of dialogue. It was more things to see and to visually enjoy. And I can already tell that this is going to be a fabulously freaky end to the season just from the buildup that we got in this episode alone. I mean, I was trying to kind of live tweet it when I watched, but I really couldn't, because every time I looked away, it's like I can't. It's more what we see and not as much what we hear yet, besides like a little dragon screech or something from Francis. But yeah, I love this episode. It's the perfect setup. It felt like a religious experience of sorts.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but yeah.
No, we say this a lot. Like the show, like every once in a while, I'll be like, "Oh, this is now my favorite episode of the show." So this, like more so than ever, this felt like the first time I watched Manhunter or Silence of the Lambs. Like Hannibal's always been on par with the quality of both those movies, but this feels like somehow even more next level. So just assume that every episode is my next favorite episode. But,
I think that's safe to say.
Yeah. The opening with Francis Dollarhide and it's not really a workout routine because he's not doing it to be fit. The whole idea of becoming better, but not to like
transforming.
Yeah, he's transforming himself. And I thought they used that imagery very well to get that message across to the audience without having a single line of dialogue spoken from Richard Armitage. I think that's how you pronounce it. I've heard.
Pretty sure.
Yeah.
You're good.
He's just so good. Like I was a little worried, but he's kind of a mix of Tom Noonan's portrayal from Manhunter and Ralph Fiennes from Red Dragon.
Yeah.
And so it's this perfect marriage of both threatening physicality and little lanky looseness, like a sort of an in-betweeners type of persona he's crafting for himself.
Yeah.
That opening was the best horror movie I've seen all year, by the way. It was frightening. It was thrilling and very unsettling. Neil Marshall, just fantastic work from him as always. Like he should be directing more horror movies, and I hope that he gets an opportunity too soon. But God, that guy directs TV episodes like nobody's business. He gives it such a cinematic quality. There's a lot I want to say about this episode, but this is a more compressed episode that we're doing ourselves. So I'm just going to mention a couple things. In Red Dragon and Manhunter, I don't mind that Jack goes back to Will, and it's not in Florida like this paradise. It's a nice, lonely, or not lonely. It's a nice, quiet cabin in the woods, and I think that's just as impactful. Like that peace, just not in a sunny Florida type setting. This is this interpretation of the world that works on its own.
Yeah, totally.
There's a line of dialogue in Manhunter, and I believe the book as well. Where Hannibal asks Will if he's ever seen blood in the moonlight. It appears quite black. And so when Francis Dollarhide comes out into the moon and it's like drenched in black. And it's blood, I was like, that is such a great callback that I like lost my mind at that part. I was like, oh, it's the thing, but they're not saying it. They just if you're aware of it.
Yes, bringing the text to life, which is something that this show is so damn good at, but especially in this episode where so little is actually spoken. And that's what makes it feel all the more spooky and unsettling, as you said, the fact that we're sort of beyond all of Hannibal still, he gets in his little quips and wordplay whenever he can because that's the way he works. And he's always operating on this crazy intellectual level and in that way likes to mess with others. We even see that with his interactions with Alana earlier on in the episode. But for the duration afterwards, it's pretty silent. And so we just have to watch and immerse ourselves. I especially appreciate the fact that in the sequence where Will is going through the house where the family was murdered, like they didn't pull out the classic jump scare like they had in Red Dragon. That technique doesn't inherently bother me all the time, but it made that more difficult for me to really enjoy, because it was just kind of this like, here I am trying to focus on what Will Graham is focusing on, and then something just kind of shatters through that, but in a way that's more like, stop. Like, I'm trying to figure out what's going on here.
I think there's a lot of good qualities to that movie. We should do a breakdown of the Hannibal movies once the season's over, because I have a lot to say on Red Dragon as well. Not all positive. You're kind of heading to where I would talk about with that movie. But yeah, if you have any more thoughts, go ahead, and then we'll wrap up and move on to True Detective.
Yeah, no, pretty much I am as in love with the show as I have always been, and the show is constantly becoming, shall we say.
Yes, it is becoming better.
Yes.
I want to end on a funny note. I think it's so funny, or so hilarious, the self-awareness Brian Fuller has about all of his works, everything he's written. It always has a sense of awareness, but not like tongue-in-cheek, like a Joss Whedon type thing. But the instant where Will is talking about the lead's dog, because the lead's family was the family that was murdered in this episode.
Right.
And then automatically Jack Crawford's like, no, you can't have the dog. Like, I just like, that's, of course Will's worried about the dog. Like, that's great. It's great. Yeah, great episode. Really interesting to see the parallels and different situations the characters find themselves in, both from the show and comparing, contrasting from other adaptations of the source material.
Right.
Yes. Jeez, I'm so excited. I think this show is going to go out on its best note yet. But again, that should be without saying. This show constantly improves upon itself, becomes yada yada. It's A+ television. But yeah, let's talk about True Detective, because this is an interesting episode to talk about. Because for the most part, I do like it, and then there's a curveball of unwelcomeness that it seems HBO is intent on putting in all their popular shows now. Do you want to take it from here, or should I give my thoughts first?
You can go. You can go first.
Okay.
Go for it, and I will elaborate.
Yes. Okay. So this episode of True Detective does a lot well, I think, and specifically the final, not the orgy scene that was so hyped up that we talked about, I thought was not flabbergastingly amazing like it kind of sounded they were going. I was like, oh, it's like Eyes Wide Shut. Yeah, okay. I mean, yeah, for people who aren't accustomed to like really weird horror or gothic cosmic horror stuff, like this is like, oh, okay, this is, oh yeah, I've been there before. But I imagine like someone goes from Modern Family to this, I'm like, oh, you know. I mean, it's not like The Shining levels of weird or anything either. So I mean, it was well directed. It's the director of Hard Home, who did Game of Thrones, the best episode.
Oh yeah.
So there's strong work here. I think the cast all plays off each other really well. I really like the moment between Colin Farrell and Vince Vaughn in the beginning of the episode. I was worried that they were going to undercut that moment with just for a cliffhanger ending and then just kind of resolve it immediately. And while it does get resolved peacefully, it helped me realize that, like, oh, I do kind of like these guys. I don't want them to kill each other or one to kill the other. I kind of want them around till the end, to the end game. And I was like, that put things in perspective for me. So that helped. The Colin Farrell, of course, I think we can all agree that if he's not the best, he's at least second best this season, performance-wise, character-wise. The moments with the son were very, very sad to me. And how he finally decides, sure, on a drug-filled rage and sobering moment, that the best thing for his son, biological or otherwise, is for him to move on. And I thought that was very sweet and sad, and a really good character moment. And then the final moments of the orgy, of course, and Rachel McAdams. God, the names elude me this season. I'm so sorry.
Annie,
thank you.
Yeah.
She gets one cool moment where she finally uses the knife stuff to her disposal and slices up a dude really
Yes.
quick. That was cool. It's very odd that they threw in a flashback to her childhood rape, because
Yeah.
that felt like it came out of nowhere, and
Mm-hmm.
it's odd that the character who's most promiscuous and the one who had in the previous episode is just like, yeah, I just love big dicks, is the one who
Mm-hmm.
got raped. It feels weird that I'm sure that these people don't think that in real life, or at least I hope they don't. But the
Yeah.
character that they put as being raped at a young age is the one that's also the most sexually active. Like, it's really weird that they
Right.
went that direction, and that kind of brings the episode down for me. Like, it was a
Mm-hmm.
little odd, and it kind of ruined a pretty good episode, I thought.
Yeah, it is strange because it's one of those moments that you know is going to make other viewers go like, "Oh, I figured," or something like that, where it's like we don't really possess any way of understanding the outcomes of trauma, and like, her sexual preferences in her adult life shouldn't just be viewed as like the end game, this just linear progression from that moment where her innocence was taken away. I hope that that's not the way. I think it's a matter of interpretation, and the fact that most people are going to take it the wrong way and try to like validate who she is now because of that instant, which of course was, I can imagine, just soul shattering for her. But it's like, what are we to believe about who she is now because of that? It's problematic at best.
Yeah.
Was there anything else that you were gonna touch on?
Uh, I really really liked the ending,
Mm-hmm.
but that moment really kind of soured it. Even it was very intense,
Yep.
exciting. Uh, I wish that just wasn't there. That added nothing other than like,
Yeah.
oh, she was raped. Then what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're just trying to shock you by that point. And
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
Yeah. It doesn't
yeah, go
it
for it.
doesn't really seem necessary for sure, because it's like she could easily have been just as terrified of the situation that she was in with this undercover mission without having to have been raped in the past. So again, it just calls to question all of these, like, why? What's the why behind it? What are we getting at? Why do we need to bring this into the picture to up the ante? I think it's exactly what you said. It's like shock factor, no. Like, please, no. I mean, if it's hard to say that this is something that's just being presented like because it occurred, it's just weird. It's weird. But beyond that, I was super a fan of the soundtrack from the whole mansion scene. That was really weird.
Yeah.
It kind of freaked me out because it was like,
No.
in a good way.
Yeah. I watched that episode rather late
Mm-hmm.
in the early morning because I had nothing to do the next morning, and
Right.
I was dumb and stayed up late. I watched it around 2 in the morning, and
Mm-hmm.
so that had more of an effect on me when I watched it, and I was
Yeah.
like, "What? Scary!" And my house creaks at night,
Right.
so that it was an effective scene that kind of
Mm-hmm.
pooped on.
Yeah.
But on that note, like, again, why was it there? I don't understand. Maybe by some miracle they'll explain why they put it there later in a
Mm-hmm.
following episode. There's only 2 left, so I don't know.
Yeah, it might not happen. So it's one of those, it is sort of that Game of Thrones-esque, like, oh, this happened, cool. And there's not really a meaningful way that it's dealt with afterwards, other than we're just left with this knowledge and why. I don't want it. I really don't.
Like, I don't want to go all fan fiction here, but would have been cool
Hmm.
if she actually went through with like getting that dude to a private room or something. Like,
Right.
she doesn't even have to have sex with him. She just like knocks him out or something.
Mm-hmm.
Rescues the girl. But she could still get scared like a different way. Like, what if they went full,
Yeah.
like Stanley Kubrick, or full True Detective weird? Like, everyone's wearing masks. Like, the atmosphere was scary in there.
Like, just do
because
something
she's
freaky.
super high. Like, the costumes and stuff
Mm-hmm.
freak her out. You know.
That I think that would have been very effective because like she's in this drug-induced state, so technically they could do whatever they want to. That's kind of just dawning upon me right now because it's like, yeah, she's on drugs and we're seeing this from her perspective, which is why we get that flashback in the first place. But they could have done something totally different with it to show her being freaked out and scared. Because it's like normally she puts up this front of sort of almost invulnerability. She's very strong. She's very tough. She's very reserved. She's very self-preserving. And so anything that they could have done to like show her vulnerability, I think would have been impactful and would not have needed to go to the extent of rape.
Yeah, like they already showed her enjoying sex. She just likes sex, and that's I think that would have been an interesting twist on that if like she was like, yeah, I'll fuck the guy just to get in there, no problem. Like she was game for it, and then obviously that's not the part that scares her, and then just the drug-induced trip scares her, you know? Like,
yeah, kind of a subversion of it.
That would have been so much more interesting. Like, oh, I got this, and then, whoa, no, I didn't know I was gonna be tripping out on what did they give her again?
It was like pure Molly, I think is.
Oh
yeah.
Which because I'm from California and I know people, lots of them. I have it on good authority that that's not really how it works, but it's fiction, so I don't. It's fine. There's weirder shit in True Detective, so I don't care.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's like, I think, again, there's so many different ways to view that scene and all the questions of intentionality. You know, I totally agree with you that they just could have done something different. And yeah, but as overall, I was a big fan of what we got to see with Ray's character. Not a fan of the fact that like he's losing his son and like trying to deal with the guy who made him kill the wrong dude and all, you know, just all the nonsense. But I just think that it's been really cool to see the way that his character has evolved. And for some reason, I'm really drawn to the super like volatile kinds of characters like Ray, sort of Wolverine style, like I don't know, for some reason I dig that. I dig it a lot. And so like the scene where Ray actually goes into the prison and confronts the rapist and like, you know, he gets this really low growly voice and he's like, this is what I'm gonna do to you, like if they don't give you life, or if they give you life, I'll do it anyway. It's just sort of like, I'm coming for you, brother. But yeah, that was really cool. I enjoyed the dialogue of the beginning scene between Ray and Frank, and sort of I think that I understand Frank's worldview better than I did at the beginning of the show, because I had a lot of complaints about the character of Frank initially, not necessarily like Vince Vaughn himself. I think that he was trying, has been trying, but I enjoyed his character more in this episode for whatever reason. I think it's just because there was actually a sort of consistency to the way that he was presented. Like when he's talking to Ray and he's saying like, you know, this instance, like being given this name of this guy that you could kill, like that unlocks something that was always inside of you. Like this wasn't me doing this to you or setting you up or whatever. Like this was just the path that you took. This was what was in you. And then when he's talking to Stan's son, later on, he's sort of talking about like the best self. It's the best self, worst self thing from the previous episode. And then also saying like, you know, it is in you to do good because of this bad thing, because of losing your father. Like, you know, you have a heart of gold and like this, you know, kind of cheesy stuff. But I just sort of, I sort of get who Frank is now. Because I think that when I came into the show, I thought that he was going to be some kind of like up and coming kingpin or something. And rather he's a fumbling sort of man, but he works with what he's got essentially. And I just kept waiting for him to like have had the upper hand all along, and he totally hasn't. And now now that I'm sort of grasping that and I'm like, okay, he's kind of a weird dude as it is. Like, I was able to enjoy his aspect of the story more, and he has been also screwed over in epic fashion as he's now partners with the guy who killed it's a hot hot mess. But it's going to be interesting to see how the towel gets wrung out in the next couple of episodes. I'm thinking that probably Paul is going to have some big moments in the next one, because he was just sort of there this episode. He didn't really do anything besides get the paperwork from the mansion. But yeah, as a whole, it was a cool episode. I think it's funny how much like the orgy stuff was built up. Like I thought it was going to be way more explicit somehow. I was bracing myself for so much more. But again, it makes sense. Like, you know, since we're seeing it from Annie's perspective and she's kind of on drugs and I think is trying not to engage with what's around her, it's like that's sort of something that could have been like so much bigger and crazier and weirder is almost subdued by her drug-induced state. So there's a lot of just interesting stuff to break down because of what happened with Annie. And, you know, I could go on about this for days.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely excited for the end game. And I'm really hoping that we get a cool payoff from all this, like, you know, the central crime, of course, has just been getting bigger and unwieldier with every single episode.
Like, it feels too like general. Like I like the broad LA landscape stuff, and I like the fact that it's so sprawling, like a traditional LA type set noir. But it feels like it kind of got away from them.
Yeah,
and the characters aren't on a point as they were last year. So I think that's where people kind of have floundered about in their faith of the show, and whether or not they're right is, I think, up to them by this point.
I think so.
Yeah, this is going to be a more interesting season to talk about, I think, just from a business and critical standpoint than the previous one, because that one almost had like universal acclaim. And yeah, it's an interesting season, and I don't know if it's all for the right reasons, but I'm totally on board by this point.
Yep, as am I.
Yeah. Well, those are our thoughts on True Detective. There's more to say, but we don't want to be here all day for that. So,
and we can do a season review too. I think would be good to like break everything down, because I'm still in holding my breath mode. I have been holding my breath this entire time. Not to say that I haven't been enjoying it. It's just that I'm waiting for the thing. There's going to be a thing, and it's either going to land right or it's not, and then we'll talk about it.
Yeah, I think even those of us who are on board are still like, okay, but when's the hammer going to drop type of thing. Yeah, interesting. But on that note, that's it for True Detective. You can find Emily's reviews on her channel, and we'll plug the stuff at the end of the episode. But right now, let's talk about, or our new segment, What You Watching, is a conversation piece where we just talk about whatever else we're watching, and sometimes we'll have different topics to talk about, Emily and I, and sometimes we'll have the same ones, like today, where we're going to talk about 7 Days in Hell, a tennis mockumentary about Andy Samberg and Kit Harington as two tennis players from two different eras who have a tennis match that goes on for 7 days. And boy, this movie is so ridiculous. It's more weird than anything that's happened this season in True Detective.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. I was like, I had some semblance of what to maybe expect from it, knowing that Andy Samberg was in it, and just I knew that there was going to be plenty of bizarreness. But as I was watching it, I just kept getting more and more like, what the actual hell are they doing? Like, I think that what's so funny about the sports style mockumentary is that, like, when you think about that sort of film or like an actual sports documentary, there's so much about like tradition and honor and upbringing, and this just like blows it out of the water in such an unceremonious way. And like and they can also draw from a lot of different types of media too, like from the courtroom drawings to that really weird, bizarre locker room orgy animated. Like, I laughed so hard because I was very briefly in a 3D animation class years ago, and like I feel like I could have made that scene. Like, it was so bad. Just like I was dying. It was so stupid.
Oh my god. I just realized too, they had a more outrageous orgy scene than True Detective did too.
They did. This is the one we should have been talking about. This is what we should have been gearing up for, because I was not
prepared.
ready for that.
Yeah, nobody was ready for this. This was something else. There was, and his jailbreak. I don't know why they animated him naked.
I know.
Like what?
And just like the flying, it was so off the charts. Like, oh man, I'm so glad we're talking about this, because I just sort of watched it and I've just had this in my brain and I'm like, wow, that happened. That was a thing.
I haven't seen many good comedies this year. I forgot my screening for Vacation, so that's on me. I haven't heard many good things about that. I need to see Trainwreck.
Oh yeah, I've been meaning to see that one as well.
Oh, Spy. Spy is very good and funny. Really well done action in there too. But you know, there's not a lot of really funny movies out this year, so this feels like a lifesaver in the midst of a pretty good blockbuster season. But, you know, I want to laugh. I want a good comedy. This is the comedy people should watch. I mean, it's really raunchy, really raunchy. And there's a three-way on a tennis court.
Yep. Oh, and they showed everything.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that they're willing to go there, though, I think that's why it feels kind of refreshing too. It's like they're just willing to do whatever they want.
They don't care. Like that's the best part about it. Like they don't care, and it's an incredibly star-studded cast. I mean, they had everybody from like Fred Armisen to Will Forte and just like David Copperfield. It was just a masterwork, like with all of the snooty British commentators and the
Oh, that was fantastic.
It was crazy. It was crazy. And also,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that like the only real touch point that I have for tennis in my life, besides like being forced to play it in PE in years gone by, is like I used to play like the Mario tennis game like incessantly as a child. So this was just like mutilating my sense of nostalgia, but in a good way, because it was just so insane. But go ahead.
Something about this movie, the way they escalate comedy, like it's pretty weird funny at first, and then it gets like really weird and almost not quite surreal, but I don't want to spoil anything for people who haven't seen it. It's just trust me, it'll
just watch it.
It'll hit you like a truck when the stuff starts happening, because it's indubitably quite funny. Something about the way he portrays like just stone-faced dumb Kit Harington. He's just. I hope he gets work after Game of Thrones, because he's good on that show. He's very good here. Give him good mainstream work, because my God, this guy, he's if he can do comedy, you won me over. So go watch 7 Days in Hell on HBO.
Do it. It's funny and weird, and like you said, very refreshing, because I just realized too that I've been watching so many dramas, and I have been head deep in this like crime and whatever else, and so just getting to be transported to this very otherworldly realm of who gives a crap is like it's good. Yeah, so enjoy it for yourself, and you won't be sorry.
Absolutely, indubitably. Now, on that note, let's just go ahead and wrap up. Emily, where can people find you?
You can find me at Mighty Sophia, EM, the word mighty, SOFIA, which is my YouTube channel, and my Twitter, and my public Facebook page. So yeah, those are all places to find me. I talk about a lot of TV, which is why I'm here.
Yes, and of course, you can always find me on Twitter at DakeWaffles, at audienceseverywhere.net, where I have most of my movie write-ups and whatnot. And on the Waffle Press Movie Podcast, I just talked about Tom Cruise's best performances. It's Collateral. Collateral is his best performance, by the way. Everyone watch Collateral. And a bunch of other fun stuff. And I started a mini game for that show called Mad Scripts, where we pitch ideas for movies, and then the rest of the group has to decide whether or not they'd see it or not. And I pitched an Ant-Man sequel that I came up with in like 5 minutes. That was fun.
Nice.
So yeah, everyone go check out everything else for Emily and myself. Like, subscribe if you like this video. And yeah, that about does it for today's episode. We've been professionally unprofessional.